we worked with the UDT team, and we just basically come up with, okay, we send in one helo, which is 6'6" with one frogman on it, and he's the guy, or UDT team, he's the guy that's going to hit the water first.
Welcome to the Calm in the Chaos podcast, where we discuss untold heroic experiences and dive into the mindset of the Navy's elite rescue swimmers. Hosted by former U.S. Navy Aviation rescue swimmer, Mount Everest solo summiteer, and best-selling author Brian Dickinson.
All right, so today I'm super pumped, super honored to have Mike Longe on the podcast. I think you were the first person I reached out to when I was doing the research for the book Calm in the Chaos, just because you're so pivotal in just the core of everything that we've built the rescue swimmer community, aviation rescue swimmer community on, and it was just so cool to have that initial conversation with you, and I'm just so honored to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
So for, I guess, just understanding, who you are, we'll get into like training and the mission sets and everything else that you worked on, but just a little bit about yourself. Like, where did you grow up?
Burlington, Vermont. So nice. I'm a redneck. Sometimes that helps. Yeah. I had a really good childhood. We all, like our family, all lived in what they called the South End. So all my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, they were all in the vicinity. The hardest part was going to parochial schools because I didn't get along very well with the nuns. But after a while, I got used to it.
Does anyone get along with the nuns? They carry rulers, right?
It was pre-boot camp.
There you go.
But I was there in the 50s. Yeah. A little bit different. But no, I had a great childhood. And then we moved down the road about 10 miles. My father bought a bowling alley, or built a bowling alley. So we moved closer to there. And he took me to where I was going to high school. And then that got to be too hard because he was driving me in every day. So I ended up switching to a school out in Heinsberg, Vermont, cow country. And it was interesting. I had a hard time in school, to be honest with you. And I wasn't doing well. And my father said one day, he gave me an ultimatum: either join the Navy or get a job. So I joined the Navy. And when I started reading all the stuff about aviation, that's where I wanted to go. So fortunately, I ended up going as an airman. And that's where it all started.
So how did that, what year was this?
This would be 67.
Okay, so in 67, what was that process like? In today's world, you go to a recruiter, you say, I want to do this job, or you go in undesignated. Was it similar back then?
Sort of. When you got into boot camp and you started training, excuse me, they gave you a bunch of things that you could read, booklets and stuff, and you could pick one out. And, it wasn't done by the recruiter. It was actually done there in boot camp. And I put in for aviation, and that's what I got.
Yeah. Yep. It's funny. My dad was in a similar situation. He says it's either go to jail or go in the Navy, which some might say was a similar environment. But during the Vietnam War, everything kicking up, he went in the Navy, and the same thing. He was in San Diego in boot camp and looking through like the different pamphlets, and he thought it looked cool, like I don't know if it was like the logo or whatever for an ADJ. So he's like, I want to do that, and became a jet mechanic. So it's interesting how we kind of pick our path, based on, you're 18 at the time?
Yeah, just turned 18. I was pretty young. He was fortunate. He went to San Diego. I went to Great Lakes in January. Gosh. Not a place you want to be in January. But no. It was a good learning process.
So straight out of, no kidding. So out of boot camp, you were able to get designated, at least take a shot at, was it Aircrew school back then, or what was the whole process?
Well, the way it happened is HS4 decided they were going to take 4 people out of the regular squadron. And the first night I got there, I was lucky enough to have met a second-class petty officer who was the MAA at the barracks. And he started talking to me, and he said, tomorrow they're going to take you down to the line, and when they ask for a volunteer for the paraloft, volunteer, and I will take care of you. He was an air crewman at the time, so one thing led to another, and he got me in, and we started training. We did all kinds of training. So it was a process.
Okay,
But,
so you were at HS4. Was HS4 in San Diego?
Ream Field.
Okay. And yeah, they were when I was in as well, out of NES North Island. All the designations have changed now. But yeah, no, that's wild. So you're doing the training. It was on the job, right? There wasn't like a formal aircrew school at that point. You were.
No, we went to different schools. Whether SEER training, we went did it. We actually did SEER training in 3 phases. We did the 10-day where you get captured and all that kind of stuff, and then we did the deep water survival, which was pretty interesting. And then we ended up on the ocean, and then in the Philippines, we had to go to a 3-day jungle survival, which was run by the Negritos, which was also interesting. That's another whole story. And then we just went through all the process, how to run the hoist. And, the first crewman would take you out, you're a second crewman, and they would train you. Some of them were really, really good. They were serious about it. So that's where the training was, hands-on, basically. And I worked in the paraloft, so I had to take care of all the rafts and stuff like that. That was part of our job. Because everybody that flew had a job. I don't know how it was when you were there, but that's what we had to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny because you go through, and when I was in rescue swimmer school, and it's like intense, one of the toughest training, high attrition rate. But that job is just a small fraction of what you actually do. It's like the helicopter does so many things. You're an asset for just everything. It's insane, and it's growing. And for me, it's anti-submarine warfare. So then you go straight to that school, learn sonobuoys, sonar, all the classifications, everything else, and even that's a small percentage of what you're doing.
Right.
So what do you recall from the on-the-job training? Do you remember anything that was like super difficult or?
I hated the sonar. And fortunately, when we went to Vietnam, we weren't doing much sonar work. We had 6 armor-plated, with M60s on the front and the back. And we basically delivered mail. We were like a utility squadron. We had to do rescues. We did rescue, whatever we had to do. And that's pretty much bring the priest over to the destroyer so they can have mass on Sunday.
Yep, Holy Hilo.
Yeah, deliver the mail to the Aussies and the British, all kinds of things like that. And so that was, I got away from the sonar.
Did you even bring the sonar, or did you just?
Some of them had it, but most of it wasn't even turned on. We didn't. The only time we ever used it was off the shore of Hawaii, and that was just to see how it would go for miles and miles and miles and miles because the water was so clear. But other than that, we didn't use it.
Yeah, no. Wasn't as big a threat, I guess, or we weren't aware of it, right?
Right.
I feel like Russia or someone was poking around during the Vietnam War, but
we had a few of those. Yep.
So okay, so you were with the HS4 for how long?
4 years.
Okay, so during that time, I mean, you were part of some of the most historic events, even to today, the most televised. I mean, just incredible things that you're doing with the, NASA and the Apollo, and I don't know. You want to just bring us through that whole experience, and we can talk about the one recovery. Or
sure,
you're in control. You tell us what you want to talk about.
So,
we're just happy to have you.
At the time, I was a 3rd class, but I was senior 3rd class pretty much in the whole squadron. And the reason why I was 3rd class is because none of us could pass the AX test. Okay, so I was an ordnanceman flying. The chief did not like that. But anyway, when it switched to AW, then that's what we did. But anyway, I got stuck back. So I was a third class, and everybody that was doing the recoveries or working on the Apollo were all second class or first class or chiefs. So one day I went to Chief Slider, who I was pretty good friends with, and I said, Chief, I don't think it's fair. I want to work on these Apollos. So he said, okay, let's go in and see the commander. We went in and saw the commander, asked Commander Smiley if I could be the hoist operator, and he said, absolutely. So that's how that started. And then we pretty much set the, what do I want to say, the process of picking up the astronauts. HS4 did. We, Commander Jones actually designed the Billy Pugh net. So we used that in the recoveries. We worked with the UDT team, and we just basically come up with, okay, we send in one helo, which is 6'6" with one frogman on it. And he's the guy, or UDT team. He's the guy that's going to hit the water first. And then we had a swim helicopter come in, and they would drop the two swimmers, and they had a photo bird. And then of course we had backups, and then we just backed off, and everybody just waited for those guys to put the ring around it with the flotation device, and so on and so forth. And then they got them out of the capsule, and we started, to pick them up, got them into the helicopter. I think at the time Hayes was a captain. I'm not 100% sure, but he was in terrible shape. He just looked so bad because he had that urinary tract infection, and he was just covered with blood all over and stuff. But they got him, the doctor was on the helicopter. We got him right back as soon as possible. And then the ship pulls up and picks up the capsule. But we did a lot of training out in the bay right from the beginning, right from Apollo 8. We started setting up how we were going to do this. And
Coronado Bay.
Yeah, I guess that would be it. I remember the big bridge. That I do remember.
That's it.
And they actually built a mock-up capsule that we used. And we would do approaches, coming in and dropping the swimmers off, even though we didn't have swimmers. There was one pilot, every time he dropped a swimmer off, his tail wheel was in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, H3, I mean, you're low anyways, right? Even at a hover, it's 40 feet, but dropping at 10.
So we really worked out a plan that really worked. And as an air crewman, we were asked in the debrief, what can we do better, or what can we change? So we were part of it, because we were in the back observing what was going on.
Yeah, for sure.
And it worked out pretty good because we did 8, which was flawless. We did 10, flawless, 11, 12, 13. We did them all. Never had an issue. Never had a helo break. I forget how many hours we had. We got the safety award because we flew for hours and never had problems. HS4 is really, if you look up the history of it, pretty darn good squadron.
Yeah, no, it is. Still is.
A lot of history. But anyway, that's what we did. We worked hard. We worked very hard to make it perfect. Especially 11, because we were going to be on TV.
Yeah. Do you remember how many people were viewing?
I don't.
It was the most live televised in history. And I mean, it's crazy because, there's so many things that can go wrong.
Oh my God. Unreal. And my dad had an old, 8mm camera, and he got in front of the TV and recorded the whole thing.
Oh, that's so cool. Do you still have that?
Yeah, it's here. I got to send it somewhere and get it, on a disc or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'd love to see that, share it. Yep. I know you've sent some pics, and I had some in the book, and I'll overlay some on this recording. It's just amazing to think about, just the technology you had. I mean, the operation, it's special for a reason. It's because you train so hard. When you actually do the actual mission, it should be muscle memory at that point, which it certainly was,
Pretty much
but
was.
you're ready for things to go wrong. There's a reason that HS4 and 66 were the ones picking up or extracting the astronauts, because they almost lost a capsule and almost drowned prior. I don't, was that
That
Apollo
wasn't us. I think it
8?
was on the East Coast,
Oh, was it? Okay.
if I'm not mistaken, because the East Coast was doing them, and then they were going to drop them in the South Pacific, and that's when we got involved. And I'll tell you, it was interesting, very interesting.
Yeah. And then when that's so televised in a critical time, with the Cold War, space travel, everything occurring right there, the last thing you want is a mishap. So, yeah, how was it working with UDT? Because that's even the UDT side and SEALs and everything has changed so much.
They were great. They were great. They could swim. There's no doubt about that. And they trained with us. They would sometimes meet us, and we would fly out and practice dropping them off and stuff like that. Because I was on a photo bird. We had a photo helicopter. That's how I got a lot of those photos. And then I was on a swim helicopter for 12, I think. And then 13, of course, I was running the hoist. But everybody had a job to do, and boy, we did it. We were tight. Aircrew was really tight, and the pilots, we were tight with the pilots. We had a couple pilots that I was really close to, and so it worked out. We see, when we flew, we would have a team, and there'd be the pilot, co-pilot, and you probably did the same. And then the first crewman and second crewman, until I got my own crew. And so you were the same 4 guys 99% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
you get to really trust each other. And even I saw where the transcripts of all the radio calls, I mean, back to wherever in Houston, it's all of that. Everything was live. It was all captured. There's so many things, and it just had to go perfectly every time. And fortunately it did, because even back then you didn't know, like, space dust and like all these artifacts coming from the moon. You had no idea, right? So there was precautions around that as well, right?
Right. Oh yeah, they put them right in that streamlined trailer, and they were in there for a while. It was like we couldn't go near it. But I have to tell you this: I can't get in trouble now. But
I think
myself and a buddy snuck down one night, and we were looking at the capsule, and we got around the backside so the 2 Marines couldn't see us, and we peeled off a couple little pieces of the gold on the capsule. I still have that piece of gold from Apollo 11.
Wow. All right. Well, maybe you will get in trouble for that.
I don't think so.
You're good. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I would have done the same thing.
Hell yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure we're not the only ones that did it,
Yeah, no kidding. So when they came back, it was like a certain amount of steps on like a red carpet to get to the quarantine capsule, right?
Yeah, it wasn't, I forget now, it wasn't humongous, real long. But I don't remember what the steps were.
Yeah, I don't know if there's some significant about that. Maybe some.
I don't know. I don't remember that for sure. But
yeah.
But I do remember we could go down and they would wave to us and wave to the news people, and because there was television people on board and all that. And then they let them out. I think they were in there for a week or something. A couple of days, but then we flew into Samoa, and Mr. Hayes flew my helicopter, and then Lovell and Swigert flew one of the other helicopters. And it was interesting when he got into the helicopter, he's going to be co-pilot, and the pilot asked him, he says, "Have you got any experience in helicopters?" He says, "I think I got about 300 hours in this model, but I think I can handle it." So
that's why you have 2.
We had a pretty, what is it, Pago or something like that we flew into. There was a base there, and that was pretty much, they were gone.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. Very cool.
That was 13. That was on 13, by the way.
That was Apollo 13, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so cool. What do you think you learned from like that whole scenario, I mean, there was a big package of scenario on all the Apollos that you worked on, but that you've been able to, like, I don't know, just in your lifestyle, like that moment really altered your thoughts, your mind.
I think the biggest thing that I carried to the rest of my life was weigh the consequences. In other words, I used to, lay in bed and try to figure out, well, if this happens, what happens if this happens, or what happens if that happens? What am I going to do? I mean, I didn't get myself too wound up, but it was kind of like weigh the consequences before you do something, and then, make sure that you know what you're going to do, and analyze the situation, and you know what to do. You've been trained. There's not much you can do if it starts oscillating, but we didn't. It was perfect. It went perfect. So
Yeah.
that was the best part. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I learned,
No, that's so important for the listeners to just understand that. I mean, you can train for the things within your control, but there's always things outside of your control. But the more you train, you're more equipped to respond positively to those things outside of your control.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then we ended up going to the Sea of Japan when they took the Pueblo. And I believe we were on station for 46 days. I know we got a commendation for that. I remember that. But it was cold and it was snowing. And we came from San Diego.
Yeah.
And
most prepared for that.
None of the heaters worked. And
Yeah,
I had a wetsuit. So I was able to wear the wetsuit instead of having to plug into the poopy suit, which was a pain. But I had one incident. It's probably the closest I came to getting killed, other than the night we almost crashed. But we had to deliver a message to the captain, and it had to be on a destroyer, and it had to be hand delivered. And I had a secret clearance or whatever. I don't remember exactly, but myself and Harry, Harry was my first crewman. So we got to the destroyer and it was miserable. It was snowing, the wind was blowing, and so I get in the Billy Punet, and Harry starts lowering me, and I get right by the ship, and of course the ship's going like this, and all of a sudden I start oscillating like crazy, and I banged into the gun tub, then I went back and banged into the guy wire, and then the pilot pulled away, and we got it to stop. And I went back in a second time, dumb kid, but and I was able to do it the second time. But I was always grateful that Harry was my first crewman because he was the best. And I went and visited him in Arlington last year. Yeah, so it was pretty cool. It was almost getting killed, but hey, it's all part of the game.
Yeah, you can learn a lot from close calls. Unfortunately, it works out. But yeah, having a proficient crewman, the pilots make, everyone's communicating, they're making the right choices.
Yeah.
So yeah, that must have been a ride though. Like you're just, there's nothing you can do, right? You're in there, you're locked in.
Not a thing. And those guys down below are trying to grab it. And
yeah, I was going to ask if they have like a rod or anything, but yeah.
They're just slipping around on the deck and everything else. But yeah, I was very, very fortunate because it could have been a lot worse.
How was it when when they pulled you back up? Was it like forceful, like G-force, or was it just like a light, like just to bring you back up to balance?
Pulled away, you could feel that. That's for sure. Because he backed off because he wanted me over the water. He didn't want me on the ship.
Yeah.
Because there was too many obstacles that I was hitting.
Yeah.
I think I hit the gun tub 2 or 3 times. And fortunately, if I had been in a horse collar, I probably would have got banged up a lot more. I banged up my back and, my side and stuff like that. But I was in the Billy Punet, which actually has a whole brace around it. I don't know if you ever saw one.
Yeah, we trained with them in Aircrew school.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about them. I didn't.
I flew in 60s, so there's just not space for it. But H3, I mean, you could drive a car in there.
Yeah. They were good size.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In fact, you could see the picture behind me. That was my first jump out of SAR school.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah. Good for you.
But that's the extent of my H3 experience. So you had a wetsuit. So you were a wet swimmer.
If we had to, we would. I never had to go in the water other than deep water survival. That was bad enough. But some of us bought wetsuits. We went down to San Diego divers specifically because we didn't want to wear that poopy suit. So when we were in the Sea of Japan, we got use out of them.
Okay. So that was your own. The Navy didn't.
Yeah, that was our own. We had to pay for them. It's sort of like some of the guys went down and bought 45s and stuff to carry. We had to give them to the AO guy to store them, but they didn't. That 38, you had one shot that had a flare in it, and the other, 5 were pretty much useless.
Yeah.
Revolver. So some of the guys, they let us do it. So yeah.
That's interesting. Like I know the wetsuits. So like I was 19 when I went through SAR school. They size you. I had to get a waiver because I was so small. So they sized me for my wetsuit. By the time I got to the fleet, that thing, I'd have to like pre-lube to like slide it on. So having your own and getting that fit, things are so much better now, but
Oh yeah. I mean, you had that microphone. I don't know what you guys had for microphones, but it was hard with those microphones, especially when you're in the back running the hoist and you're trying to tell the pilot something.
I know.
So we
the
had
wind's hitting it.
Yeah, we had that little cyclic, which helped out. But my son-in-law, he flew in the what are they? 5 years ago, Blackhawks or whatever they were, when they went to Iraq. And I went to the base one day because they had an open house, and he showed me his helmet, and I was like, "Holy crap!
I know, just the helmet alone, right?
Yeah, night vision, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. When I was in, we transitioned from the helmets that you wore, the big ones. They can like spin around in your head. And we had the heavy night vision goggles, huge battery pack. So you're after a 5-hour flight, you're just like, man. But then we went to the smaller helmets, which were better. I don't know. I don't know. I'll just say they were better. But the ICS was still the same. I think they've probably resolved that. They had like Vox control and stuff. But when you're in the high winds in the open cabin, you're trying to like cover this while you're like still trying to do the hoist and do the hover trim and all the stuff. So it's a complex environment for sure.
Yep. But we managed.
So I always say for a SAR swimmer is the ultimate form of serving others. I mean, your whole job, you're out there, or air crewman, you're out there risking your life on a daily basis to help someone you don't even know. So it's like we find these areas in our life where we still find opportunities to serve others. Have you found that in your own personal life?
Well, the combat vet motorcycle club I'm still in. I'm a life member. I don't ride anymore because of my vertigo, but our logo was vets helping vets. We raised money and we helped every way we could with veterans. Awesome. Yeah. And we basically did it in the state of Vermont. Like North Carolina has their own. Something like 18,000 members.
Wow.
Through the country. And we just do nothing but work to help veterans. And I'm the kind of person that if I'm at Lowe's and I see an elderly man or a woman with a couple of bags, I'll go right over and say, "Can I help you with those?" And, most people are pretty appreciative. So, yeah, it's always been, I think you get a sense of giving back because of what you did. You saved lives, you helped people, whatever it took. And I think it carries over. I really do.
Yeah, I do. I think it's a trait that's maybe a lot of us had it going in, or maybe it was hammered into us. But I think when you're immersed in it daily and you're doing it at such an elevated level, it just becomes a part of you. So that's really cool to hear.
I've got an incident that was pretty interesting. Okay, off of San Diego, we had a helicopter just came out of the shop. Okay, so my pilot volunteered to test it, and on test flights we only had one crewman, and we were out flying around checking everything, doing the auto rotations and hovering and all this other stuff, and then we got an emergency call from a destroyer, and I had to go by myself. They had this dead person who had died on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they had him in that big, long metal cage.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, getting that up and into the helicopter by yourself is no easy chore.
Yeah.
But I managed, I got it in, and we took him into the morgue at San Diego, sadly. But other than that, that's the one I always think of. That I actually at times think about that in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it's really tough. Isn't
yeah,
that the Stokes litter? It's like that, the one on the ship. I don't think they didn't, it was designed way before they were using helicopters, right? So,
yeah, it wasn't made for a helicopter, but I was so afraid I was going to drop the darn thing.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
I managed. I got it in.
So
You know.
did you hoist
Yeah.
the litter up and
Yeah.
yeah,
Hoisted it up and pulled it in. Yeah. So that made it even harder.
yeah, it does. Yeah, that would be very difficult. I was just
Yeah.
talking to someone else who had, oh, yeah, on one of the other episodes, they didn't have one of the hoisting cables, so it came
Mhm.
up vertical, and then trying to kind of maneuver that in, it was like almost impossible, but they figured it out. But they had a couple different folks helping out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's that. Yeah, those are the, I don't know, the calls that aren't highlighted, which they shouldn't be. It's respect for what we're doing, but
No,
it's also a
exactly.
big part of the job, the medevac, and
Yep.
not everything is glory. It's, you're doing your job. Again, you're serving that person, getting them back so that their family can, hopefully find peace.
Yeah. We did the few in the Gulf, you know, where we had to bring them in, pick them up, and bring them into Da Nang
Mm.
to the hospital for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And you always felt sorry. There was one on a destroyer. They had a gunfight. Two guys. One of them got shot. The other guy shot him. That was scary. That poor
Yeah.
guy. And we had to bring him in. And I didn't pick up anybody in the water that was from an airplane or anything, but we were only there for 6 months, and then NASA got us. We were supposed to go back,
Mm.
and I can tell you, HS6 was not happy.
you know?
No, they had to go in our place.
Oh, yeah.
So I find myself fortunate that I only had to spend 6 months off the
Mm.
coast,
Yeah.
So, but we did a few rescues in 1966. You probably know this. HS4 did the most rescues under fire than any other anti-submarine squadron. They did 24 rescues under fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a bunch of silver stars, a bunch of Navy medals. So,
Yeah.
yep. And
And that
then
was that all over land?
no, over water and over land. I mean, that's where we had our biggest issues was over water. And I don't know how far I'll go into this. I got to be careful. We used to have to fly up because if you look at where Yankee Station is, it's pretty close up towards North Vietnam, relatively.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when the jets go in and they bomb and they come back out, they're going to fly over that little section because they want to get to the water as fast as they can if they've got problems,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, because they don't want to bail out in the jungle.
Right.
And there used to be these dugouts that used to sit there right off the coast, waiting for those guys to come out. And I will say, the only thing I'll say is that sometimes we would hover and kind of hover sideways, trying to turn them
Mm-hmm.
over because, we figured we'd get in trouble if we shot them. Not that never happened. It did happen on occasion, but
I'm sure.
yeah. But that's what they were doing. We knew what they were doing. And the deal was if we saw weapons in that dugout, we could shoot them.
Hmm.
But the easy way to do it was with a helicopter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So you guys are flying with the M60s?
M60s and M16s. We each had an M16 we carried.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a couple times, depending what we were doing, we had to carry blood chits. I don't know if you know what that is.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, depending where we were going.
Yeah. Yep. That's the real deal right there. That's you leave from the safety of the ship, and you're going to a mission set like that. Like there's always that thought of not returning, and
Hmm.
especially if you're carrying what you're carrying. Um, how has that been like since? Do you think about those mission
Um,
sets or?
yeah, I've had my issues. I still, and I'll tell you, I'm very, very grateful for the VA.
Yeah.
They have taken good care of me, far as psychiatric help, and I had oh God, about a year ago, I had some really hard times. I was having a lot of nightmares.
Mhm.
I was waking up and stabbing Pam and tell her to get the hell out of my helicopter, stuff like that. And then I went and saw the psychiatrist. We had like 4 or 5 meetings, and he set me straight, got me going, thinking about things differently, and trying to not necessarily minimize it, but just come up with some tools to get you out of it, stop thinking about it. But yeah, it's you remember certain things that just scare you,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can't
Certain
help
things
it.
can trigger you in that moment. I think a lot of people that serve on different capacities, they have that. And just, I know when we're in, it's obviously different eras, but a lot of times you didn't deal with that while you're in. You wanted to be active. You didn't want to be labeled. You want to fly,
Yep,
but
yep.
it does catch up, and it's good. I'm so glad to hear that you've gotten help.
Yeah, yeah, and
Safe
it's
space.
out there, and that's one of the things we've lost. We lost 2 last year from the combat vets, young guys,
Yeah.
and it's so freaking sad. 30s guys in their early 30s and stuff.
Yeah.
And we have lost 3 of our riders to Agent Orange, cancer and stuff. So
Yeah.
we had shit to deal with, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure you did too.
Yeah.
Well, just getting in a helicopter every day is enough to make make you scared.
Yeah. 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 We all have our experiences.
Oh yeah,
Well, thank you for sharing. That's in your vulnerability. I mean, it can help so many people. You have someone who's done so much like yourself, and just it's okay to not be okay, and just
exactly.
acknowledging that, and
It's
getting
hard to
help.
learn that though.
It
You
is.
know,
Yeah, it's hammered into us to do the opposite.
don't show any weakness.
No, and that's that's not healthy. So
No,
uh,
especially while you're in. It gets worse
yeah,
if you show
yeah, of
weakness.
course. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on the show. I mean, you've had incredible experiences that no one can really relate to, or even understand. Based on all that knowledge, I mean, what type of wisdom would you want to leave our listeners with?
Oh boy, don't ever give up, because I wanted to fly so bad that first day I walked on the base. And then
Mhm.
I found out you had to go to AX school, and I found a way. And the guy in the paralop, that second class, he babied me, and he got me through a lot of stuff, because he was an air crewman at the time,
Yeah.
and they needed another air crewman. So he put my name in, and I got accepted. So, it was kind of like, don't give up, don't give up. I want to fly in those darn things. That's all I wanted to do. And I
Yeah,
did, you know.
yeah,
Yep.
that persistence. It's great wisdom from a great man. Just thank you. I'm just so honored to have you as a friend,
Yep.
as a aircrew brother, SAR
Yes,
brother.
absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just amazing the stuff that you did, and just thank you so much for sharing your stories, your experiences, being in the book, being on the podcast. Just really
Well, thank
appreciate
you for having me. I do appreciate it. And thank you. You did quite a bit of stuff too,
it. Thank you.
especially climbing that darn mountain.
Yeah, that little mountain. Well, thanks again,
Okay.
and thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. Please subscribe to be notified of future episodes, and if you enjoyed what you just heard, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. Until next time, get out there and make a difference so others may live.